position. Rise up, make that decision. God will provide all your needs. He wants you to succeed. Have faith of a mustard seed. Get up on your feet. Rise up.
Welcome to another segment of the Turks and Caicos Show. We continue with our series on Where Are the Men? And the reason I'm doing this is because there's a cry for men in society to take up their position, their rightful positions. And it seems like they're absent. But there are quite a number of men in the society who are doing a lot of work. And today I want to introduce you, or reintroduce you. So this is the first time on my show, but I'm quite sure he's well known in Turks and Caicos, Mr. David Bowen. And I believe that we ought to recognize him as he, I believe, is one of the persons who more or less have done his best to maintain and educate us about our culture here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I know our country is growing. We have is a melting pot with so many different nationalities. I think we have over 99 nationalities in this country. And somehow it seems like we're losing our culture. We didn't even kind of even identify sometimes who we are. We're being influenced more with the outside world. But we need to at least maintain our basic culture. And I appreciate what David is doing. And so that's why I invited him on the show, because there are men in this country who are doing some powerful things. And so, David, I want to welcome you to the Turks and Caicos Show.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes. So, David, before we get into the show, I want you to tell the viewers, who is David Bowen?
Whoa.
Hey, it was a long...
How much time you got? Okay, I think all of you know, maybe not, because I still get people calling me up or telling me I'm a Bahamian.
Oh, boy.
I know Bahamian, that's for sure, right? I am from West Road, Grand Turk, right? So I was born in Grand Turk, and my father actually is Jamaican.
Oh, Bowen. Okay.
Well, no, actually, my family, the Halls from Middle Caicos. Mm-hmm. My great-grandfather was Peter Hall. He was the first teacher of the school in Middle Caicos. As a matter of fact, Clement Howell, Clement Howell was the head boy of the school that my grandfather was teaching at.
Oh, wow.
And my mother was head girl.
Oh, wow.
All right, so I come from that line of people. I'm also from the Bakers in Grand Turk and Salt Key. And my mother remarried Henry Bowen, who was a member of Parliament, and Mr. Bowen was also, my stepfather, was also one of the men who helped to write the Bahamian Independence Proclamation.
Really?
Yes. Mm. So I have a very interesting, varied family background, but I moved to the Bahamas to be with my mother, and I would come back to Grand Turk every summer to stay with my grandmother, who was the one who really brought me up. Mm-hmm. So I can say that the culture of the TCI was implanted in me through living with her mm-hmm. in West Road and then going back and forth to Middle Caicos, mm-hmm. to Larmus. In the Bahamas, I was lucky enough to have Mr. Bowen, Henry Bowen, my father, my stepfather. He gave me lots of leeway to explore myself, and so I started doing karate. I was swimming and diving. I was doing martial arts. I was also track and field. And eventually I got into yoga and I got into mindful meditation at a very young age. And I'm so glad I did that, because a lot of my friends ended up, doing all that silly stuff, drinking and mm-hmm. smoking and getting into trouble. But because I had that mindfulness and that awareness at a very early age, at 14, 15, I escaped all that.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, and then I eventually was training with Lois Seiler and Lou Seiler, who were my mentors. They saw my talent in Freeport High School, and I ended up getting a scholarship to study in New York City with Joffrey Ballet and Alvin Ailey, and I ended up working with Clive Thompson, who's also Jamaican, but he was one of the top dancers with Alvin Ailey and Martha Graham in New York. Yeah. So he took me to Staten Island to be the lead dancer in his company. So I danced with him for a number of years. I ended up leaving the company
I wish I knew how to dance.
But you can dance, man.
I don't know. That's one thing I wanted. I wish I knew how to dance and I was singing.
Well, people. Okay, there's a misunderstanding about dance because when dancers are amazing athletes. You talk about Michael Jordan jumping and flying. That's nothing for a dancer to do. I think that people don't give dancers enough credit.
I think you're right.
We are athletes. We have to actually lift women.
It's a skill. It's some skills. There's a lot of skills involved.
It's a skill. And the one thing what a lot of guys don't understand is that there are a lot of women in dance. So if you like gals, shoot.
That's the
start dancing. That's how I really took on to it, When I was in Freeport High School, I saw that Miss Sila had 25 girls in the class. There was no boys around. And when she asked me to join her class, I signed the line, man. I was there. But then I realized that I had a talent for it.
Right.
And then suddenly it changed my whole focus. And so that took my career on a whole different level. I actually had a scholarship to go to Cornell, right? To do business administration and accounting. I gave up that scholarship to study dance. Of course, my parents were not very happy.
Yeah, and Cornell's a good school too.
Yes, Cornell's a very good school. I thought, okay, I'll do it for a year and then go to Cornell. I never ended up going to Cornell. And so I left New York after a while to go to Stockholm, Sweden. The government there invited me over for a year and a half to be the head instructor.
So how did they find you through?
Because they had some students who were coming to New York and they were coming to my classes and they reported back that they enjoyed my particular method of dance. Wow. And so they asked me to come in to head the jazz dance program and the ethnic program. So I went to Sweden. But after a year and a half, the weather there really got to me. It was cold, very cold, and for months and months and months. I mean, it was just dark. Yeah. Anyway, I left that, went back to New York, and I ended up with my friend Michael Peters, who was doing Dreamgirls. He was the choreographer of Dreamgirls. He was doing something with Michael Jackson in LA, and that's how I got into the video.
That's right. Which video that was?
It was Beat It.
Beat It.
It was Beat It.
Oh, one of my favorite songs. I love Michael Jackson, one of my favorite musicians.
Well, me too. I mean, I grew up, he and I the same age.
Michael and Whitney Houston, oh boy.
And so I grew up with the Jackson 5, so I knew every song. So for me, it's an honor. But then what happened was the Japanese loved Michael Jackson. So after me being in that video, I got another call from Japanese who come to Japan to help them with some programs there.
Wow.
So I went on a few months back and forth. Finally, I signed a 1-year contract. And then the 1 year turned to 2 to 3. And next thing you know, 10 years passed by. In those 10 years, I would go back and forth to Thailand.
So you speak the language?
I speak Nihongo Hashimasu, yes. I speak Japanese.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's my second language. I mean,
wow. Impressive.
I had to perform. All my show, I had to sing and act in Japanese. There was no English involved.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for a while until I was doing Cats, the musical, and I got injured very badly, my back. So I took 6 months off. I used my yoga to heal myself, and I decided that I didn't want to dance anymore. And in '95, I starred in a Japanese movie. I was a star.
What was that movie called?
It was called Tonari no Bob Marley. Tonari no means the next door Bob Marley. So it's about this young Japanese guy who comes to the city, to Tokyo from the outskirts, I think Yokohama, and I'm his next door neighbor. And I had my dreads, a lot of dreads, and he loved Bob Marley, so he thought that I was the Bob Marley. He called me, called me Bunny, but he thought I was the next Bob Marley for him. So it's about our story. It's a fresh story about him growing up, and at the end of the day,
that's awesome.
I ended up being not a really good guy, right? So but it was a movie I did in 1995. After that, I decided that it was time to come back home because my grandmother, Ursula Alberta Hall, she one who brought me up, she was living in Grand Turk, and she was not doing very well, you know. And when she was 86 years old, she came on about an 18-hour flight
to Japan
to see me.
Nice.
Right? And we had an amazing time. In Japan, they really revere the elder people. So she was my grandmother. So all of my students, all of my clients, to them, right? She is like,
they honor her.
Yeah, they honor her. So she loved that. And then when she was not doing very well by herself here, I decided that it's time for me to give back. So I came back home with the idea of coming back for a short time. And that was in 97, I think it was. And next thing you know, Butch Stewart heard about me, that my background in theater and dance, and he had never known anyone from TI who had that background. So the next thing you know, up to this day, I have been the one and only TI who's ever been a entertainment manager at beaches.
Wow.
I was the first and last.
I didn't know you were entertainment manager.
Yes, I was
okay.
for a very long time. And then he liked me so much, he actually took me to Jamaica to work for him in Ocho Rios. So I was working as the interim manager in Ocho Rios for a year and a half, a year and a half.
Okay.
But then I realized that I came home to be home, so I moved back. And when I moved back, it was Ralph Higgs who saw me in IGA, and he said that, come and see me on Monday. And then by the end of that week, I was the new director. Well, actually, I was the new cultural officer at that time.
Oh, because it was under tourism.
Yeah, I was cultural officer. And then a year or so later, they decided that the government was going to, I think Charlene Cartwright was very instrumental in that, and Skip to make it an official position,
Right. A separate organization.
So I became director of culture, and that would be my 14-year time with them, where I really realized that we were lacking in so many things. And then being around the world, where I saw how they respect their culture.
Yes.
So I was able to see, okay, there's definitely something lacking here. I worked for beaches, and we had to wear the Jamaican national costume to welcome the guest. That didn't go down well with me, but at the time we had no national costume.
You're in Jamaica, so you got to do that.
Yeah,
you're in Jamaica.
But then here, we're doing it here.
Oh, sorry, you're saying in Turks and Caicos?
Yes, in beaches here, we had to wear the Jamaican national costume to welcome guests.
I just got you.
Yeah, at the time, I was like, well, what is our costume? So it was my job, so I didn't say much. But then when I became director of culture, I realized that we had no national costume. And that was why the first thing I did when I became director of culture was to put together the national costume, because I knew that we needed something to identify us.
Yeah. So what year was this?
This was 2001. And it made its debut in 2002 during the Queen's Golden Jubilee. That's when national costume was debuted, along with the national flower and the national tree.
Right.
Those three things came out at the same time. So I was very proud of that. And
tell us about tell us more about the national costume.
Well, the national costume, being in Japan 10 years and wearing the Japanese costumes for many things, I realized how important a costume is to giving the person identity and pride. It shouldn't be just one old shirt and hat, but it has to have something. And so, speaking with many elders throughout the islands, I realized that everyone on every island had their idea of what the national costume is. You go to Salt Key, you get one idea. You go to Middle Caicos, you get one idea. So I realized it has to be a costume that embraces all of us under one umbrella culturally. At the same time, give each individual who's very proud to be from Grand Turk or Salt Key. And that's how the whole idea came about. So we have two white golds. We had cotton and we had salt. So the male costume was basically celebrating our salt industry, and the female costume, the cotton industry, through the plantation dress that women wore. Then I had to find some kind of scheme to identify what the islands represented. So the rainbow color came through, right? Different colors, but a color had to be assigned to each island properly. And that's why it was yellow for God's glory as the sun, shining down equally. I say that equally on all the islands.
Yes.
And then the first island it meets its Grand Turk. So first color was red. It was Grand Turk for our Turks and Caicos Cactus. Then Salt Key, the salt, the white. Then Salt Caicos, the orange for the lobster. And Salt Caicos and East kind of combined together. And then you go over to North Caicos, where you get basically the green. Or Middle Caicos for the tan, and then the green for North Caicos. And then Provo, based on our new industry tourism, I chose turquoise. Right? And then the pink came about because the sunset is beautiful in pink in the end, but also the flamingos and the conch shell is pink on all the other. I think that's how it came about. Then a person can now showcase their island pride. For the female, her sash, her scarf is the color of the island she was born in. And the men, on their hats, the color of their band is the color. So therefore, you can be proud to be from Grand Turk, but still be under the umbrella of TCI.
I love it. We bought our children have their costume, and now I have my own. I think our first one we got it from Barbara. It was a school event.
Okay.
And Barbara said, "Oh, Jesse, I'll give you one," and then I got some made.
And I think, unfortunately, luckily, it has definitely been around the world now. But I still don't think that we give enough. Promoting enough. We're not using it enough.
I wonder if beaches have their stuff.
As a matter of fact, I think they one time they'd asked me about that, but I don't know if they're doing it now. But they did ask me at one time where to go and get it done. And so I'm sure they have some costumes there. So that's my first thing I did.
But we appreciate that.
Well, for me, I know that I really want to instill national pride. I want to be proud of something, not just wear the Bahamian. Before we were wearing the Bahamian. What's the thing called? I forget already.
What's that?
But I forget the. Yeah, it'll come to me later on. But we were just wearing any kind of flower shirt or hat for anything. We didn't really realize or have something. Yeah. And the next thing that really bothered me was that we were not paying attention to how important ripsaw music was.
Oh yeah.
AKA rake and scrape. Being in the Bahamas, I'm definitely from both worlds.
Of course.
However, I realized that what the Bahamians were calling rake and scrape was just basically what TCI was doing, is calling ripsaw music.
Oh, so we call ripsaw, the Bahamians call rip and scrape.
Rake and scrape. So what happened
rake
was...
and scrape.
There was a...
I say rake and scrape. Rake and scrape.
There was a DJ on the radio, Charles Carter, and he was describing what the men were doing in Cat Island. They were raking and scraping. That's where the name comes from, describing that the saw was being rake and scrape. And what he didn't realize is that the men he was watching were really not Bahamians. They were Turks Islanders who had gone to Cat Island.
Oh, so we migrated from Turks to Cat Island.
Yeah, well, our music, as everything, as you know, we eventually moved up to the Bahama chain. And wherever you move as a country or as a people, you take with you your culture.
But why we didn't maintain it here?
Well, it's very easy to understand because we are an island chain. See, we are separated by water. And sometimes what happens that because we're not one island, it's very hard to keep someone doing something in Provo that have no idea what somebody doing in Salt Key or doing in Grand Turk, you see? That's why it's important to have some kind of overall communication where we're all receiving the same information at the same time to feel a part of it. In the Bahamas, same thing in the Bahamas, because in the Bahamas, Nassau is the center of culture. It really is. They look at Freeport as the second city and so on. They don't, the culture doesn't really spread out as much. So what you see, the Junkanoo is in Nassau, doesn't really filter down to the other islands. They still do what we call Masin. The real Junkanoo.
Yeah, that's what we had. I remember growing up in South Caicos.
Yes, of course, you would know.
We had Masin. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
and that, it gradually disappeared.
Well,
I don't know if they still do it. I don't know.
There were attempts, and I made many attempts over the years to bring it back, and that's how we came about this whole thing with Maskanoo, because I was getting really tired of hearing all these Bahamians coming here saying, we want to see Junkanoo. And I said, well, the Junkanoo that you do in Bahamas is not the same thing. And so after fighting, I said, okay, I'll compromise. I got the Mas, I got the canoe, and I made Maskanoo as a way of celebrating both cultures, In any case.
I like the concept.
It's a good concept, and the thing about it, going back to what men are doing here, I think sometimes our men don't realize that their behavior, how they are, has an effect on generation.
Absolutely.
Everything I do is family orientated. No show I do will not, I would say, keep out the grandparents or every show I do is family friendly. And sometimes our men forget their behavior, but with their drinking, with their carrying on, with their loudness, and this, they don't realize how that can affect
it's very impactful, very impactful.
So we have to also be aware of, back in the day, I remember as a child going to events, it was a time for the family, and then the children go home, then the adults had their fun. Now the adults are showing their fun right in front of the young children. And that really bothers me when I see some of the lewd behavior of our men and women in front of young children. And then we wonder why there's a problem.
Yeah, why we have the society issues.
Exactly. So it all goes back to that, to being mindful of all those things. So for me, I think that I will continue working with this particular way of this technique of making sure that everything I do is family friendly,
Right.
that it's something to be proud of and not to hide, even though we have that other aspect of our culture that we have to celebrate too. I can't say deny it, but we claim to be a Christian society, but I'm not quite sure all the Christians act and behave like Christians.
Yeah.
They have the title of it, but do you really live up to?
Yeah, that was my article I wrote recently. We need to live by example.
Exactly.
Don't say one thing and then
do something else. So for me, going back to culture, when I left here to go to abroad, I took everything that my grandmother taught me, and when I went anywhere, people were really astounded where I came from. And I said, this is my country, the small little rocks, they could not believe, I used the Bahamas because it's well known, right? But then I said, okay, now if you come right down the end of the Bahama chain, that's where I come from. So I'm very proud of that. I remember meeting Sir Sidney Poitier for the first time. And I know he's from Cat Island, right? And so when I met him, and my stepfather, Henry Bowen, actually ran as the representative of Cat Island at one time. So I had a good talk with him. And he, as a Bahamian American, was also kind of upset with how the culture and the heritage was slipping away from the Bahamians.
Yeah. Speaking of Sydney.
Yes.
Well, after he died, I saw a lot of posts, saying that his mom was from Middle Caicos.
She was.
Huh?
That's how we had a conversation. Yes, she's from here.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure that was factual or not.
It is definitely, it's a fact. He's from Middle Caicos, yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So we had a long talk about that in New York.
So he knew his mom was from Turks.
Oh, yes. Oh, he knew. Okay. But he was...
Of course, he grew up in the Bahamas.
Yes.
He was born in Miami.
And then he ended up... Yes, exactly. So he was during that time when they were doing all the pineapple things and the farmers who were going over to pick pineapple and stuff in Miami. But he was well aware. So we had a good connection. So I told him my background, and he knew my father, my stepfather, and he knew us from Turks. And he was like surprised to see a young boy from Bahamas and Turks in New York. I auditioned for one of his movies, as a matter of fact. That's how I met him.
Okay.
Back in the day, I didn't get a part, but in any case, we became friends then. And I knew that he was very keen on maintaining his Bahamian and American culture. And he actually ended up being the ambassador to Japan at one time too. So I was very proud of that. But I was living there when I came back too. Yeah.
So I know you've done a lot. I think you used to go into schools as well.
Yeah, I mean, a huge part of what I did when I realized that at that time, over 90% of the teachers who were teaching were not from here. So how could they teach culture when they have no idea? So at that time, I remember the Ministry of Education would have me do orientation with all the new teachers to do something cultural. And then I would go into schools to reinforce that. So when they have any time to do culture, I would go in and explain folk music, folk dancing, our dialect, so that they have an idea of what to teach. Because if you left alone, all they could teach is their own culture. So you hear more Jamaican dialect and more Guyanese. So you can't blame them.
No, that's part of them.
It's part of them. Yeah. So I was very happy. I did those 14 years. I was definitely a hands-on director.
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of guy who sit behind on a desk and just, I had to be hands-on because I lived the culture.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was growing up, there was no indoor running water.
No.
There was, there was slop buckets, and
that's right.
You had to go to the outhouse there, the toilet outside, and So I cannot tell you that how important it is for me to have grown up in a society in Grand Turk where I live that lifestyle, because you can, no matter where I go, I can always survive because I know exactly how it is not to have those things.
Exactly.
But our people, we take it for granted now because we're doing so well. Sometimes we forget to give respect to our elders and respect to the people who brought us up to where we are right now.
We do.
And I think that culturally, we need to have more respect for our culture. Culture is changing. I mean, the nature of culture has changed.
Yes.
But there's certain things that you have to sustain and maintain because that is where your pride and your identity comes from.
I was just about to ask
Yes.
you why should we maintain the culture? And you just answered that.
It's about our identity. You know, who we are. What is it to be a Turks and Caicos Islander? You know, what is it? What does it mean? Because we get people coming here from all walks of life, from all different cultures, and they still, even though they have to leave their country,
They brought it with them. And guess what? They're influencing us.
Yes.
Because we're doing a lot of things that they did. And, you know, and as a result, our culture is dissipating.
it's being diluted and changed,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think if we don't get a handle on that, eventually what was the real TCI, I think it's going to be diluted into something else completely. And there'll be more connection to Jamaica or Haiti or Bahamas, you know. It's good to celebrate those people because they are part of who we are, our culture, and building up our society as a mix. But, you know, when you come in someone's house, you gotta, you know, abide by their rules, you know, and live and respect and respect the home that you're in. So I do a lot of education. I work for Race Play Club. At every orientation, new staff, they always bring me in.
Okay.
I did one yesterday where I go in and I tell them all about TCI culture, and to tell them when the guests ask about TCI culture, don't say, "Oh, I don't know, I'm from Jamaica," and tell them all about Jamaica. No, you know, here are the resources, what you can do, and really, to educate our staff from people who are from abroad will also give them a sense of belonging too, because we tend, as TIs, we tend to push away people who want to be integrated.
Yeah.
We put them as them and us, you know? And
We do have that issue.
yes, so we have to stop doing that and appreciate what they can bring to the table. And the more that we can be more proud, but then again, what happens, they see us not respecting our own culture. So how can we ask them to respect our culture when we ourselves are not?
You think that's an element?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. They're not seeing us. We'll have a, say, Jack McCartney Day, or we'll have a Flag Day, and they would see us going to Miami or staying home and not celebrating the culture and history. And then when they have their Flag Day and they go big, who complains? We complain. You see?
I understand what you're saying.
So we have to understand that every holiday is not just another chance to go to Miami to go shopping.
It's to be celebrated.
It's to be celebrated, to celebrate your culture.
And to celebrate what the holiday is about.
Not just the party aspect of it, but to celebrate what it means.
Yes.
What the holiday means.
Yes.
You know, to be ingrained, to give you
I absolutely
national
agree with
pride.
that.
So that's where, you know, my heart is. And that's why for 14 years, you know, I really worked hard to show people how much I love my country and how much I respect, even though I could have brought so many aspects of Bahamian culture to TI. I could have brought so many African-American culture to TI. I refused it, you know, because I could have done that. But I want to do the down-home thing, and I think I've done my best.
You have.
You know?
You've contributed significantly to this country
and
in promoting and maintaining our culture.
It's where I'm from, you know, even though some Bahamians, they're surprised when they find out you were from TI.
Yeah. You spent quite a number of years there.
Yeah, I did. But remember, every summer, I was back here to get some reinforcement, you know.
Yeah.
But then even in the Bahamas, I let it be known that you know, where I come from. But the problem was in the Bahamas at the time, you know, in the 70s, you couldn't really say too proudly.
Yeah, I know. I heard those stories.
You're from Turks Island, you know, because there wasn't, you know, we were third-class citizens.
Yeah.
We looked down upon.
Yes.
You know, and I'm so proud now to see my people from 8 Mile Rock and Seagrape. Now they are proud to say that they're from Turks and Caicos.
I love it.
Back in the day, you couldn't say. And you know what really struck me was that the #1 gospel band in the Bahamas, right, at the time,
Is that the Cooling Waters?
that not one of them was from Bahamas. All of them was from, all of them was from Turks and Caicos Islands.
Wow.
You know, but they were in the Bahamas. You know, and even another story I want to tell you was very interesting is that I worked for the casino, El Casino in Freeport. Myself, Matson Delancey. Do you know Matson? Matson owned Goldfinger. You know, the bald-head guy was a Goldfinger.
Oh, really? Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Matson Delancey, Kermit Mullins. Kermit is from South Caicos. The three Bahamian all-male dancers were not Bahamian. All was from Turks Island. You know, I didn't even know Matson was from here, right? Because he never identified as TCI.
Right.
And I came home one time and I saw a mask. I said, what you doing here? He said, why TI?
My own.
He home, man. So I was very, very happy to see my good friend. And he danced. He's also an amazing dancer.
Yeah.
For many, many years.
Right.
But again, I love what you're doing about exposing how important it is for the men to step up.
Yes.
But again, to step up in the right ways too. You know,
absolutely.
To be very productive, to show that you have pride in what you do and all the work that you do. To have your fun, but ensure that you have the common sense not to influence the younger people with your behavior. And I think also that our government, our tourism industry, we have to also work together to ensure that we promote our history, our culture, and our heritage.
We have to. And I think we have to do that through the schools.
Yes, most definitely. Because you see, our culture is passed on in the past through family and within our neighborhood. But that's changed now. It's changed. So there must be a place where they can pass on stuff. So I think the school is one of the places.
Yes.
And of course, every public holiday and every festival should have an element of a teaching tool about TCI culture. No matter what, have your party, but there has to be something within the festival that is going to showcase and teach.
Excellent idea.
Not only the tourists, but remind our people of where we come from. So.
Well, David, you're saying something?
No, I'm good.
I just want to thank you again. But before you leave, I want you to. I know you talk about the
ripsaw.
I want you to demonstrate to us. I wish I knew. I wish you could teach me. I want you to demonstrate that blowing of the conch shell. Do you mind doing that for us?
Not at all. Not at all. A lot of guys don't know how to blow this conch horn.
I don't.
And it's very easy because if you blow a trumpet, it's the exact same technique.
So what they use that for? I mean.
Okay. Well, traditionally, I know that the conch horn was used by fishermen. Like, for example, when they're coming back, or there's some fresh fish in town.
Also, they let people know.
Fresh fish for sale. Okay. So when you hear the conch horn, you know it's time to go buy some fresh fish. Right?
Okay.
Also, I know that there were times when, if a storm is traveling, back in the day, there was you had no telephone.
Right. Communication was very limited.
They would blow a long single tone. And so
I'm impressed.
I can do it much longer.
I'm impressed.
Right? They blow that, and also there was communication between families. I know in my family, my grandfather and my grandmother, they had their communication. What I call, for the school kid, I call it the shell phone.
The shell, okay.
The shell phone, no cell phone, and a shell phone. And so my grandparents, our shell phone number for our household in Grand Turk was 2 short, 1 long times 3. So when Grandpa comes back, because we live on West Road near the pond, so we go on the bay, we go fishing. When Grandpa comes back, he ain't got to walk all the way to the pond. He just called my grandma. So whatever she's doing in the backyard, getting the cold stove ready, and then when he's ready for her to come and help him clean the fish and bring it home, she'll just call. So their conch shell, their shell phone number was 2 short, 1 long times 3, right?
So okay, go ahead. So the shells was pretty common. People as a means of communication.
Yes, it was. It was. Did you hear that? She would say, "Oh, that's Julius."
Okay, I love it.
And then she would grab me, and then she would go down. Your grandpa, come. So we'd go down the road and help my grandfather. So
I love it.
The shell itself, I think we take out the conch and we throw it away.
Yeah.
But this conch shell was important because when you burn this, you get something called quicklime, and you make tabby, or you make a kind of cement. And that's why you see some of the houses, the very thick wall houses with the A shape, it's made from shell. Also to whitewash the house. Okay. Yes. This conch shell also, of course, for dry conch, a huge important part of our industry before cotton or salt was to trade with Haiti. They call lambi. So we couldn't grow bananas and we couldn't grow too many mangoes, so we would trade the dry conch for everything we couldn't.
Right,
And
so it was like an exchange.
Everything went through South Caicos. Everybody had to go to South Caicos first, and then take the dry conch, and then go to Haiti and come back with all the stuff that we can eat or we can purchase. This shell also, if you go in Salt Cay or Grand Turk or South Caicos, man, people look at shells on their walls. They always decorate. It's a good decoration. So there's so much history and culture around the shell, not just something that you get the conch out of. You know? Right. So blowing the conch horn, really, the sound does not come from the horn. It's amplified by it. Because the spirals, what it does, it takes a small sound and makes it louder.
Okay.
If you go to a speaker, you will see the many coils in the speaker. Same thing applies to the conch. So the real sound is what happens to my lips. It will go into the hole here, and then that sound is amplified. So the real sound is this. That sound is
just...
same sound. No different. That's the sound.
Okay.
So how you use your lips, how you use your belly, you can go. Just with my lips.
Okay.
So it's all about that vibrating your lips.
Right.
And then the sound goes over here and it goes through and up. And you always kind of, people do like this, but you normally have the sound hole facing up.
Okay.
And a lot of guys really can blow the horn, you know. But they think it's like blowing a balloon. It's not like this. The idea is to keep your jaw tight, keep your lips thin to vibrate, and keep your abs tight. So it's more. And that sound. That's how it is.
Oh, it looks simple, but
it looks simple. It looks simple, but easy to learn. Easy to learn. And I remember when I used to be an MC for the conch festival for many years. You know, I had a conch blowing contest.
Yes, I remember that.
And you know, most times it was some white foreigner would win it because he blew a trumpet, and they could.
So they utilize the same technique.
Same technique. Why? What is it?
What do you know about conch blowing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but actually, it's just about the same technique as blowing a trumpet or a trombone. Same technique, you know. So that's it. So that's the conch shell. And so I remember as a kid, my grandfather gave me a harmonica and he gave me a conch horn as a kid. So I was blowing that I was like a little child in Grand Turk, you know? So I still play the harmonica and I'm still teaching about this important aspect of our culture that we don't really give enough mindfulness to, awareness to see. It's on our national crest, you know? That's
right.
You know, it's on our national crest. So yeah, so that's my 2 cents about that.
Yeah, and then
Now, the saw, I must say that the saw, what folks don't realize is that the saw is unique to us, but it goes back in history. You see, because the saw comes from the fact that the saw has ridges. So this grater, right, it's the same thing. It has ridges, right? And the washboard has ridges. And that's why you can play the saw, because the saw has ridges. It's the same thing. But because we use probably a screwdriver or a nail, and the saw can bend and give you what's called overtones. Right? So it's not just... And we can bend to make a saw. And depending on where you are, like in Bahamas, they hold the saw differently. Sometimes you'll see them hold the saw like this, in the arm like this. They do it here, or they put one foot down like that. Yeah. But for us, normally for TIs, it's normally one on the side here to brace it. And so you hear like Diamond or Zeus play the saw, man, or you know, Lovey Forbes and Curry Forbes. And then I must say that Lovey and Curry Forbes have really been really instrumental in keeping some of the richness of our culture. So I got to give respect to them, especially for Lovey Forbes. And that song, The Old Conch.
Yeah.
That's an amazing song that I love to teach the kids about, because it's a wonderful story. It's a storytelling thing too, you know, and it captures our culture. So anyway, so that's the sword, and it goes all the way back to West Africa. They can trace it back to Africa, where they use a very similar thing, but it has ridges.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's great. So it came over. Africa's our ancestors. And,
exactly.
And,
exactly. And I think we don't recognize that part of ourselves either. You know, we kind of make a distance with that. So.
Well, David, it'd be nice if you could end with a story. Do you have any stories?
A story? Well, I'll tell you what. Since we talk about conch, like let me tell the story about the old conch and the fresh conch.
Okay.
You see, one day there was two conch talking, one old conch and one fresh conch, right here on Grace Bay Beach. Well, the fresh conch, he say, I is the fresh conch, right out of the sea, skin like silk, boy, nothing sweeter than me, to make conch salad. Cut meat up with some lime, you see, maybe with some onions, tomatoes, some pepper, even some celery. On this beach, for a small fee, there's nothing sweeter than me. Well, in the old conch, he was like, turn over, and came, or old straw, he say, oh, I is the old conch, dry out in the sun. Skin like silk, no, I ain't got none, but soak me in water, I promise you this, ain't nothing sweeter than dry conch and grits. On this beach, for a small fee, there's nothing sweeter than me. Well, the fresh conch say, try conch and grits. What the hell is this? Conch salad is top of the list. Fresh, right out of the sea. There's nothing sweeter than me. So my old friend, your time is done. Carry your dry skin back out in the sun. Well, the old conch say, my, such hostility. But the fact remains, there's nothing sweeter than me. Like the old saying goes, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And you know, if you're from North Caicos, Middle Caicos, or the Caicos Islands, the drier the conch, the looser those hips loose, yes. That's why the old conch will always be sweeter than the fresh conch.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
So, I use that story to kind of explain what the thing about. Yeah, so.
Well, thank you very much. Any closing remarks?
No, just want to make sure that my people, my men, you know, that you do your part, that you yes, have your fun, but also remember that people are watching you too, to show that higher level, to live your religion. If you are a Christian, then be a Christian man. If you have to pass on information, make sure you pass on the right information to our young people. For all my people in TCI, don't forget to respect your culture, to have national pride, and identify with yourself, no matter where you come from. Grand Turks, Salt Cay, South, whatever, you are part of the umbrella of what we call the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Yes. Thank you again. You've been watching the Drexel SEMA show, and it was my pleasure having this conversation with Mr. David Bowen. And I want to thank him for his contribution again to the Turks and Caicos Islands. I believe he'll always be remembered because he has transformed our culture, in that not transformed to change it, but transformed to bring awareness to us. And I think it's important for us to maintain our culture. We need to identify ourselves as Turks and Caicos Islanders. And one way to identify ourselves as Turks and Caicos Islanders is not the piece of paper, but it's the culture, the way we do things, the way we talk, the way what we eat, you know, and this is being done through the works of David Bowen. So I encourage all the men, all the women to continue to do what you're supposed to do. And that's why I have David here, to show you that there are men in society who are playing very, very important roles. And David is doing a great role promoting, maintaining, and educating our culture. Thank you.
Blessings.